Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blue Devil Beat. I'm your host, Ranjan Jindal, here joined by three amazing people in my studio here. Also, first joined by Caleb Dudley, my co-host. Caleb, how are you doing, man?
Doing good.
Good to be back. We're also joined by Ryan Hamner and Dom Fenoglio. Ryan Hamner and Dom Fenoglio, both returning guests to Blue Devil Beat. Ryan covered Duke football's loss up in UConn. Ryan, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks. Good to be here.
And Dom covered Duke basketball's win against Western Carolina, home opener there. Dom, welcome back to Blue Devil Beat.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a great time.
So we'll start with football, and then we'll move on to basketball. On the football front, obviously a very disappointing loss for Duke, traveling up to East Hartford and losing there at the end. Start with big picture takeaways, and then we'll kind of dive more specific. But why do you think Duke lost that game?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the turnovers is what Manny talked about, but I think mainly it was just the inability to convert on offense most of the game. Just felt like they weren't able to get things going the way that the offense has in the past. Took a little bit for Cooper Barkay to get involved. He wasn't really a key contributor as much as he has been in the past. The running game was really good. That was a success once more for Shepard. Really seeing some progress out of him, but overall, just not getting the first downs, not getting to the red zone was really what did it in, as well as the defense. Just giving up a lot of yards to a good quarterback and a good offense, but couldn't make the stops when they needed to.
Yeah, it really felt like, especially early, I was like, Duke is going to take control of this game, especially with how it was dominating on offense. Had a couple of early stops against UConn, but then Joe Fagnano, Jim Mora, and crew, they really found their rhythm, and Skylar Bell cooked. I mean, he kind of outplayed Duke's best corner, Chandler Rivers. Chandler can't stop them all, but that was kind of my thought as well. We talked about going in how important Bell was going to be, and he contributed a lot. What do you think, Caleb, from that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about it on this podcast. The theme is just any team that has a good passing offense is trouble for Duke because the secondary is just not very good. And again, we saw that. I mean, Raymelo Murphy had 5 for 110. Bell had 11 for 87 and 2 scores. Juice Farine had 4 for 46 and a touchdown. So it's just like wherever Chandler Rivers is not, let's just throw it over there. And it's a pretty good strategy for any team that's playing Duke, especially when you have a quarterback that is as accurate and takes care of the ball like Fagnano does. So Duke has a really, really good passing offense. One of the best in the country, but it's just if his defense can't get a single stop through the air, it's going to be a tough game every single game.
Yeah, Ryan, what was the sentiment in the post-game press conferences from what you saw from Coach Diaz and was it Nate Shepard and Jeremiah Hazley?
Yeah, we talked after to Nate Hazley. I think that was it, and Manny. They were remarkably reserved and not as frustrated as I was expecting them to be. They seem very level-headed and already focused on this coming week, and were pretty adamant they were going to be able to get reset and get focused. But mainly just highlighting the inefficiency on defense was Manny's thing. But Nate talked a lot about Darian and how he's been successful all year, and so isn't going to say that it's fair to chalk up 3 mistakes, a bad interception and, a brutal turnover at the end to that. But yeah, I think they're continuing to look forward, which has kind of been a theme throughout the season. But I think at some point you kind of have to look back and be like, maybe we should address some of these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It was Mensa's lowest passing output, at least 222 yards, which is still a decent amount, but from what Mensa's been doing over the course of the season, it feels low in comparison, and he made those mistakes there. I think one of you guys had asked Nate Shepard about the fact that he was so successful on the ground, but maybe was frustrated he didn't get even more carries in there, and so he could have gotten more. But for the most part, the offense played well, just a few little mistakes at the end. And in the grand scheme of things, this game does not matter in the ACC race, which is important to note, but still, obviously, for a team and a confidence boost, it would have been important to win there. On the defensive side of the ball, Caleb or Ryan, I'll ask you both. Obviously, they were so successful. Duke's had some injuries on defense. UConn's offense was so successful. Duke's defense was not. But what are some of these biggest weaknesses on Duke's defense, and why do you think, Coach Diaz, a defensive-minded coach, hasn't been able to get that adjustment that he needs to see from his team?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it. I think injuries, especially in the secondary, has been tough being down. Terry Moore still hasn't played a snap yet for Duke. Who knows if he will. And then Kamari Robinson's been out as well. So it's just this is tough sledding. I mean, they got guys that haven't played a lot of games, and Landon Callahan and Musa Kane out there, Andrew Pellicciotto. But really, I've been surprised that the defensive line hasn't got as much pressure the last couple weeks as I've expected it to. Coming into this year, I thought Duke would have a really, really good defensive line, one of the best in the conference, if not, the whole country. And it started that way. I mean, VJ Anthony was at one point, a top defensive end in terms of sacks, and the production's really kind of just fallen off. I don't know if it's, teams are starting to key in on something on film, but it's just really been, or maybe, just a lack of a want to at this point. But yeah, it's been a little disappointing on that front. So all around, I mean, the whole defense has kind of just been a letdown to me.
Yeah. Anything to add? Dom, I know you're also a football beat, so don't want to exclude you totally from this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you guys covered it well. The defense has been astoundingly bad, honestly. I think a lot of injuries to the secondary, to the linebacker core, makes it really hard to overcome. But kind of what blows my mind week to week is just the holes that seem to be picked apart. And it's not even anything players could have done in coverage better. It's just the running back suddenly has an entire side of the field, or the quarterback pulls it on a read option, and Wesley Williams and VJ Anthony, who are fourth-year great players, have already, tackled the running back. And, that kind of stuff is frustrating for the team, I'm sure, but somehow they're still in it. I mean, all they got to do is win. They control their destiny. So
it felt like UConn brought just a lot of weird packages on both offense and defense, and on the offensive side that they're doing a lot of switches and cross field movement that they just suddenly can turn open and run up the field. And then on the other side, I know that the offensive line seemed to just be getting absolutely ran through, every other play.
Yeah, it's interesting, the running quarterback and defensive line point that you were making, Dom, because Fagnano didn't even do too much of it, but he had a 26-yard run where he pulled it on the option and took it. You saw Tulane Retzloff. I mean, we talked about this at length. That was how he scored all of his touchdowns, essentially, and it feels like they're really selling out on the run, but not keeping contain, especially against these Russian quarterbacks.
I remember it might have been like a third down or something. UConn, the quarterback didn't pull it, and if he did, he would have had a touchdown.
We were talking about
it's astounding. You have those types of plays. You have screen passes where Duke just doesn't have the numbers. You're playing guys not in press coverage. Maybe they're not, ready to play press coverage, but you have 3rd and 5 and you're giving up a slant pretty much every time. And there's nothing the corner can do because he, doesn't have the right leverage to stop the receiver when the receiver has a step on him already. And the quarterback hasn't thrown an interception all season. But I try to not coach because, it's tough out there.
Yeah. Regardless, this is still obviously a very, very talented football team who can play for a lot more this season, something that Duke has not had, an ACC championship in a while. So that first step in that is a Virginia game this Saturday in Wallace Wade Stadium. Again, against a ranked opponent, likely the biggest game in the rest of the schedule. We're going to talk to Xander Tilock later from the Cavalier Daily in this episode, so super excited to get the full preview there. But just to start off from us, what are your guys' thoughts on that game? What does Duke need to do to win this game? Do you think Duke will win this game? Any of those questions? Ryan, I'll start with you. We can go around.
I think they just need to find their identity again.
Yeah.
A little bit of a spark. It seems like that's been lost in some of the last, at least certainly against UConn. I think they brought it against Clemson a few weeks ago. But being willing to fight, Virginia's a physical team. They don't score the ball a whole lot. They play these low-scoring games and then somehow find a way to win, and sometimes a way to lose as well, like we saw. But figuring out how to stop Chandler Morris if he plays. I don't know the latest on him, but he's a very physical runner who can definitely give Duke some headaches on that side. But just go back to the Duke we've seen in previous games of putting points on the board and figuring out, continuing to improve in some of the penalty areas, as well. I would love to see that.
Yeah. Caleb?
Yeah. I think, like Ryan said, I think a lot of it hinges on Morris. I'll be interesting to see what Xander says later about his status for Saturday. And for Duke's side, what Duke can control, I'd like to see them just show a little more like they care out there on defense, just a little bit. It's not going to magically get better. Like, they're not going to, unless Terry Moore shows up, nobody else is showing up to play and magically fix this defense. So they got to play with what they got. And I would just like, just a couple third down stops or a turnover in a timely moment would be nice at this point. It's been pretty bad. So I'd just like to see that. Again, like the offense can score with anybody. I don't think Virginia's defense is anything spectacular. They're solid, but nothing that, like it need a special scouting report for or anything. So just like to see Duke at home just come out and just impose their will on someone for the first time in a while.
Dumb thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think Duke certainly has exhibited the traits of a very talented football team, especially on offense. But it's what their 10th game of the season at this point.
Yeah,
and you keep waiting for them to turn the corner and stop making silly mistakes, stop shooting themselves in the foot. But at this point, I think that's just kind of a symptom of the team that it is, and I think they're capable of beating Virginia this weekend. I think I would be surprised if they play a flawless game. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will see indeed. So Saturday at 3:30 p.m. in Wallace Wade Stadium. I think Duke pulls it out. I think it'll be tough, but I think this is a team that knows what it needs, and I think the UConn game was a necessary wake-up for the final, quarter of the season. But again, like we mentioned, we'll talk to Xander Tilock later in this episode, so super excited for that. Let's switch gears over to the basketball side of things. Like I mentioned, Dom covered Duke basketball's win against Western Carolina. The Blue Devils are starting off 2-0 this season, first with a win 75-60 against Texas over in Charlotte, and then Western Carolina. Two very different games, very different opponents. But over the course of the two games, what have you seen from this new look Blue Devil team?
Yeah, well, the first thing that jumps off the page to me, which I think will get talked about at length throughout the course of the season, is how reliant the offense is at times on Cam Boozer.
Yeah.
Especially against Texas, I think you didn't see very much initiation from anybody else in the offense. I think at the start of the second half, you had Isaiah Evans and Patrick Gumba really kind of take over, and those guys are working at their best, able to play a really effective two-man game, but for his entire time here, Isaiah Evans has been a very streaky player. And against Western Carolina, I don't think he made a three. He was 0 for 5. And, that's okay. I think Duke can handle that if they can get production elsewhere. But what was really promising in the Western Carolina game was the emergence of Caleb Foster and Caden Boozer, because I think Duke does not have Siam James, Con Knippel, and Cooper Flagg, who are all, and Tyrese Proctor for that matter. Duke last year had 4 players capable of bringing the ball up the court and initiating offense, driving to the basket confidently without turning it over, passing, off of screens, running the pick and roll. All 4 of those guys could do that at such a high level that they're now playing in the NBA. And they just don't have that this year.
And killing it for the Charlotte Hornets, 2 of them, might I add.
And, I think the defense on this team is going to be great. They're elite. Their size is elite yet again. I think Dame Sarr and Nick Menia have the potential to develop into more slashing roles, but it's a lot harder for them to kind of get that space when there's no ball handler, drawing defenders off of drive and creating space for their teammates. So I think Caleb Foster and Caden Boozer did a wonderful job against Western Carolina. The only drawback I'll say to that is Western Carolina is just not as talented as a team as Duke, and they're not as big. They weren't able to play very aggressive defense because of that. So I think there still are a lot of questions around that for me.
Everyone read Don's sidebar about Caleb Foster and Caden Boozer. It's on the website. I agree with you. The guards are super important. And I think against Western Carolina, I was impressed with Caden ran the pick and roll a couple times, and he seems to really excel in that 7 to 10 foot range of the little floater game, using his body nicely. And Caleb Foster is, for all the criticism about his offensive game, is a very good finisher. And I think he does a good job using his body there. So if Duke can get production from those two, especially within the 2-point range, their shots are a work in progress, but that can add a new dimension to the offense too.
Yeah, and to me, it's not even offensive production. It's not scoring. When a team is pressing you on defense and guarding you full court, you cannot expect Cameron Boozer to dribble the ball up the court or be there every possession as like a stopgap and release the pressure. There needs to be somebody else capable of doing that. And I think both Hamner and Sarr are not there yet with their handle. And even Isaiah Evans, frankly, is just, still developing that handle and that strength. So you need somebody capable of just breaking that pressure.
Agreed. Yeah. I thought Sarr and Hamner also, with the strength aspect of it, got bumped off their spots a couple times when they were driving, so need to be better at attacking hard. That comes with the college game. They're both new freshmen too.
Definitely.
Caleb, thoughts on the game from Duke as well? We're in stands.
Couple other things. Yeah, I think we haven't really touched on the first game, that the matchup against Texas and Charlotte. I thought, it wasn't pretty for Duke in a lot of ways, and like Dom said, a lot of that came from Boozer having a tough first half. I don't think he made a shot in the first half, right, and then ended up 3 for 12. But I think, the defense has really impressed me. Texas, who knows how good they'll be down the stretch, but two games and both opponents have shot under 30% or lower. And especially Dominic Sars really impressed me on that end. Honestly, his offense is leaving a little bit to be desired so far. That missed dunk at Spectrum Center stands out. But he's I think can develop into that guy for Duke that can really go turn someone's water off. He blew up a lot of actions against the Longhorns and just has really long arms. He's athletic, making a lot of plays in the lanes. For me, I think another point which impressed me against the Catamounts was Cam showed a little bit better of a shooting stroke than I expected. I think a lot of teams are going to dare him to make threes to beat Duke because he's just so physical inside. And I thought he had a good-looking shot. He's 4 for 9 from 3 against Western Carolina. Obviously, that's a game at home against a lesser opponent. But if Duke's going to succeed down the stretch, he's going to really need to be a consistent shooter on that end. It doesn't have to be spectacular, but consistent. 35% or so would be huge for Duke.
Yeah, agreed. I also want to see Malik Brown's aggression on offense. You saw it with glimpses there, but he scored 27 in Cameron a couple years ago, and we know he can. He didn't need to be aggressive offensively last year with how potent the team was, but if he can get going, I think that can really help be a lift for this team. All right, well, we are recording this the day that Duke is going to play Army, so it might not be out before then, so apologies, we're not covering the game, but Duke's playing Army tonight, Tuesday night, up in West Point, and then got a non-conference game against Indiana State Friday before taking on Kansas next week. So we'll talk about all that next time. But Dom, Ryan, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For joining us today. We'll be right back with Xander from the Cavalier Daily. All right, everyone. Welcome back to Blue Devil Beat. We are so excited to be joined by Xander Tilock. He is the sports editor of the Cavalier Daily. Xander, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, for those who haven't been paying too close attention to Virginia football, obviously it's been a very, very impressive turnaround from 5-7 last year already to 8-2 this year under Tony Elliott's tenure. Can you give us the spark notes, the story of the season so far for Virginia? What has happened so far in these first 10 games for the Cavaliers?
Absolutely. So I just wrote this story called "The Authors, Architects, and Descendants of Virginia Football." You can find that on CavalierDaily.com. I definitely recommend checking that out. Basically, money wins. And so this team, they committed to Coach Tony Elliott. They received several anonymous multi-million-dollar investments. So they were able to build an $80 million facility. They renovated the lighting and video board and sound system for Scott Stadium. And they were able to go play some portal football. And they got Chandler Morris, they got Mitchell Melton from Ohio State. They splurged on a class of 30-plus transfers, and they all hit, especially because they hired this consultant, Scott Pioli, who formerly was the senior VP of player personnel for the New England Patriots. He won 3 Super Bowls there. Pioli is a 5-time NFL Executive of the Year. And with him at the helm, along with Tony Elliott and a very, very large front office team, Virginia essentially professionalized its operation and found incredible success doing so.
That's so interesting you say that, because I feel like Duke's story is very similar in the sense of NFL guys, general manager position. There's an analytics guy who attracts transfer portal talent, and Duke's figured out a way to turn around as well through that. So interesting stuff there. On the football side of things, obviously the season has been fantastic, but the lone ACC blunder was this past Saturday, hosting Wake Forest, losing 16-9. Obviously a big loss in the first half there with Chandler Morris getting knocked out. What caused that loss for Virginia, maybe aside from Morris as well, and why do you think the Cavaliers lost that game?
All right, so going into that game, Virginia was only one of 2 teams in the country, the other being Miami, to not give up a fumble. And Virginia lost 3 fumbles, and that was really the story of the football game. Defensively, they did not give up a touchdown. It was just that punt return touchdown and several field goals. The turnovers really pulled the story of that game. Virginia hangs its hat by forcing turnovers on defense and not giving up any on offense. Against Wake Forest, they coughed the ball up multiple times, didn't get any turnovers defensively, and still it was a close game. But really, those turnover margin losses there, that's what caused that loss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ranjan mentioned Chandler Morris, obviously a big loss there. What's his status as far as you can tell for Saturday? And if he plays, what does he bring to the table?
So I spoke with Coach Tony Elliott Tuesday about that, and he did not give any update. He said that Chandler Morris is, quote, going through protocol, which some would assume means concussion protocol. That may not be the case. He was out there on the field in street clothes during the rest of the game against Wake Forest under the bright lights. He attended practice Monday, although he didn't play. He was also present Tuesday. Tony Elliott says he hopes to have Chandler Morris practice on Wednesday, but that is yet to be determined.
Great. Outside of the Morris injury, the offensive output the last couple weeks has been a little bit lower than the start of the year for the Cavaliers. What do you attribute that to? 17 points against UNC and 9 this past week against Wake Forest. What do you think's been the impetus for those struggles?
Injuries have really, really hurt this team. So McKylan Thomas, who was presumably the starting right tackle, has had a long-term injury. Wallace Unamba, who was the backup right tackle, was actually dismissed from the team a couple weeks ago. There was no comment on that from Virginia Athletics. So they are starting at right tackle a graduate student converted tight end in Jack Whitmer. They've also dealt with injuries on the interior to center Brady Wilson. And of course, Chandler Morris has dealt with a shoulder injury for the past month. That shoulder injury has played a big role. So this Virginia offense that is usually so creative and so strong at pushing the ball down the field has struggled to do so. You see Morris missing throws. You see them struggle to run the ball up the middle as the interior line is still a little bit banged up. And offensive coordinator Des Kitchings has caught some heat the past couple weeks for some vanilla play calling, especially against Wake Forest. Daniel Kalen is a highly capable backup quarterback who they got after in the portal. And Kalen is simply a better quarterback than the one that we saw Saturday against Wake Forest.
Flipping over to the defensive side of things, statistically much improved from last year. John Radzinski in another year as the coordinator there. What's your take on the defense, strengths, weaknesses? Just give us kind of the outlook of this Virginia defense.
This defense, it seems like it's changing every week. Well, initially this was an offensive-minded team.
Yeah.
Virginia now ranks in the top 10 nationally in terms of overall pressures. And it all starts with star junior linebacker Cam Robinson, who actually is now the only player in the last 20 years with a punt block, pick six, and fumble recovery all in the same season.
Wow.
Cam Robinson will be playing on Sundays, yes. And Mitchell Melton, the defensive end, the Ohio State transfer, he's coming to his own. He had a huge game against North Carolina. And early on, this defensive backfield was prone to giving up big plays. They gave up 250-plus yard completions to William and Mary. They were getting thrown on a lot by NC State and Louisville, but they've really clamped down. You see Donovan Platt, Emmanuel Carnley, Jordan Robinson, and Jason Pavard, who's that nickel spur position. They have been incredibly much improved. And it all starts up front with those pressures. Daniel Rickert on third down, the Middle Tennessee transfer, he has been electric. And ultimately, because they found the success getting to the quarterback, those defensive backs have had a much easier time, and this defense has been able to shut down opponents pretty well.
Yeah. You mentioned a lot of guys there. If you had to pick one, maybe a guy who wasn't talked about as much on offense or defense, that you think will be a big key for Virginia this week, who would that be?
I would say offensive guard Drake Metcalf is the unheralded gem of this team. He filled in for Brady Wilson at center when he went down, and Drake Metcalf is simply an aggressive football player. He's a bit shorter for the offensive lineman, but he's very powerful, very strong. He's got a low center of gravity, and he's been a force in the run game and pass protection. Really, up front, it all starts with him. Wilson may be the one receiving and sharing the calls for the offensive line, but Drake Metcalf has been incredibly consistent for this team.
And what do you think are some of the keys for Virginia to come into Wallace Wade Stadium this Saturday and take a win from Duke? What do you think Virginia needs to do to win this game?
So I talked with Coach Tony Elliott Tuesday about that and Duke's loss to Connecticut. That loss to Connecticut does not reflect how good of a team that Duke is, whether it's Darian Mensah or whether it's their array of skill position players. This is a very, very good Duke football team. The record does not tell the full story there. And so for Virginia, what they're going to have to look out for, of course, is that prolific passing game. Very few teams can throw the ball as well as Duke can.
Yeah.
And they also have to be aware of the running game. I spoke with Elliott today, and he said that everyone's talking about Duke as a passing team, but they're actually a pretty balanced offensive attack, and not a lot of people are saying that enough. And so defensively, this team is going to have to find a way to affect the quarterback and limit the run game and still take away those deep balls downfield.
And I don't want to put you too much on the spot here, but do you have a score prediction for Saturday?
This Virginia team is absolutely chaotic. They embody that ACC coastal chaos, which is
Oh
still
my
alive
gosh.
as well. I could see this game going many different ways.
Yeah.
Right now, though, based on the trajectory of Virginia and the uncertainty around Morris, no one has any idea, quite honestly, if he's going to go, what the status is on him. Danny Kaelin got hurt also in the last game, although he should be fine.
Okay.
Right now, I'm going to go Duke 31, Virginia 27. We'll have to see Saturday.
There you go. You heard it here first. Well, Xander, tell everyone where they can find you, find your newspaper. You guys do great work over at the Cavalier Daily. So, yeah, where can everyone find your work?
Thank you. So if you go to www.cavalierdaily.com, go click on the sports tab, you can see our work there. We have a section called Editor's Picks where we highlight our favorite features. I recommend checking that out. You can also find my account on X, which is at Xander Tilock, at XanderTilock.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
Well, Xander, are you coming down this Saturday to Wallace Wade Stadium? Is that what you said? Or someone else?
Yes, I'll be there with some of our photo folks.
Okay, well, we will welcome you here. Hope you enjoy your time in Durham. Yeah. Well, Xander, thank you so much. This was awesome. You had great analysis of this game, and I'm glad that you have been able to cover this team and this turnaround because it's absolutely been astonishing and just kind of indicative of where college football is heading. So great stuff, Xander, and thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you too.
All right, we'll be right back. That was awesome stuff from Xander there. Full preview of Virginia and what should be an exciting game down in Wallace Wade, or I guess here. Yeah, here at Wallace Wade Stadium. Did you have a pick for the game? I know we talked about it earlier.
Yeah. Xander gave some really great insight, so I'm glad to have that to inform my prediction. I really do think, I said this earlier, I think if Morris plays, I think Virginia wins. If he doesn't play, I think Duke wins. It sounds like Virginia's pretty ravaged with injury, which, a lot of teams are at this point, but I do think the offense is significantly worse without him. Even with his hurt shoulder he's had, the offense has been worse. So I will take Duke. I think Duke maybe has a chance to get it right here and close out strong. And so I'll take Duke. Go 35-28 Duke.
Yeah, that's the same vibe, I think. I think Duke wins by maybe a touchdown to 10 points just because, like I mentioned, I think this is a big wake-up call. UConn was after the momentum from Clemson. I think the team probably got a little bit complacent about its abilities and had a classic trap game over in East Hartford.
Yep.
Not Stores, because you corrected me. So
East
now I know.
Hartford, yeah.
All right, well, if you're on campus, have fun at the game. Pick up our basketball prints while you're at it on shelves across campus. But why don't you give us the rundown for the other sports across the board? Because there's been a lot of action in Duke sports.
Yep. So we'll start with women's basketball. After the loss in Paris, which we touched on last time, big win over Holy Cross, first win of the season, home opener. Toby Fournier, 27, I want to say. Monster performance out of her. And then Jordan Wood also played really well. This week for Kara Lawson's team, they have 3 games the rest of this week. That's Norfolk State on Wednesday, West Virginia in White Sulphur Springs at like the Greenbrier Classic on Friday, and then Sunday at Liberty. Women's soccer is starting their NCAA tournament push. They're the 2 seed in their quadrant with UVA as their 1 seed. That starts against Elon at home on Friday. Cross country is going to regionals on Friday as well in Charlottesville. Field hockey Friday as well. The tournament begins for them against Iowa in Chapel Hill. If they win that game, Sunday against mighty North Carolina. Field hockey. Volleyball. It's been, I think, now 28 days since volleyball has won a set. That's Thursday and Sunday, Virginia Tech and Virginia. Then swim and dive this weekend is in Atlanta for Georgia Tech Invitational. And then to close it out, wrestling. 2-1 now at this point, wrestling. Been pretty good. Connor Barkett's been really, really good as all of his years at Duke. Sunday, 2 matches in Baltimore, Morgan State, and Drexel to close it out.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Winter sports starting, fall sports season, postseason on the way. Yeah, men's soccer going to find out their postseason fate at some point in the near future.
Yep.
But yeah, exciting stuff across the board. I don't know. I think we covered it. Anything else on your end?
No, yeah. Well, it's a busy week for women's and men's basketball and football. So
yeah.
ACC championship, is it on? Is it off?
Oh, I know. Yeah. What were the You mentioned a post, I think, that David Hale had with the probabilities.
Yeah, so it seems
we're talking football, by the way.
It seems like at this point, Georgia Tech and Duke control their destiny outright. So if Georgia Tech and Duke win out, that'll be the conference championship. The rest of the teams will need, some help from other various points. SMU and Pitt being the big names there. I think Miami technically can still make it, and I think I saw someone post that NC State technically had a shot, and the Virginia obviously as well. So it's gonna be really interesting. I think now the talk has been, even if I think the ACC as a whole, fans of the ACC don't want to see Duke make it, because then you run the risk that no one makes the playoff from the ACC, which I think is a very real possibility. But yeah, it's very interesting. But I think as it stands, if Duke beats Virginia, North Carolina, and Wake Forest, they will be in Charlotte on December 6th for the conference championship.
It was a wild week in ACC football last week, too.
It
was just every game you have no clue what's going to happen.
Xander mentioned it. Coastal Chaos has spread.
Yeah.
Duke was also a member of Coastal Chaos back in the day. I remember very vividly the last championship game against Jameis Winston. And then, you had Virginia make it with Bryce Perkins. And yeah, so all lose to Clemson, usually the teams that make it.
I was going to say, by like 30.
And so now Clemson,
with a win.
Well, and then so now you have really some interesting teams at the top. But yeah, it's gonna be very interesting. Who knows what's gonna happen? I mean, even North Carolina and Wake have both looked better, so we'll talk about those in the weeks to come. But there's no easy games left for Duke, and at this point, who knows? So very interesting, but something to keep an eye on for sure. Definitely something to keep watching. Duke fans, still have a chance to make the conference championship.
Yeah, would be a crazy time in Charlotte. And if we were to play in Charlotte, Caleb and I would be in East Lansing, Michigan.
At the Breslin Center. That's so true. Yep.
That's okay. We'll talk about that later. But thank you guys so much for listening. Keep up with our coverage online at DukeChronicle.com. Like I mentioned, basketball preseason print is on shelves across campus. Sure. And
please tell us, Ranjan, before we leave, who sponsors
this is podcast. I forgot at the beginning to mention our wonderful sponsors, so I apologize. But this podcast is brought to you by Duke Stores. Support your favorite team. Duke Stores is home to the only collection of merchandise brought to you straight from Duke University. Go to shop.duke.edu for all of your Duke merch. Get your Duke merch. Go watch some football / basketball this weekend in Cameron Indoor and Wallace Wade. We will see you next week. For Caleb Dudley, I'm Ranjan Jindal. This has been Blue Devil Beat.